Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I'm your host, Georges El Masri. Today, I interviewed Thomas Pobojewski, a former chartered accountant who became a realtor and investor. He followed in his father's footsteps, got his real estate license, and then eventually found his passion in real estate investing. His primary real estate strategies focus on fix and flips, long-term buy and holds. And on this episode, we talked about how he's been able to successfully flip properties in Mississauga, Brampton, and Etobicoke. A lot of these places, people traditionally have not been flipping because of the price points and whatnot, but he talked about how he's able to make it work, how he manages to do 8 to 10 flips per year while selling real estate. We also broke down a new Brampton condo purchase and flip that he's working on, how he finds his off-market deals, and how he uses private capital to get ahead. So I know you guys are going to enjoy this episode. If you do, we ask you to leave us a 5-star review and to share this with a friend or family member, because we all want to grow. We all want to build our wealth if we're listening to stuff like this. So I know there's going to be benefit to them. And then if you want to connect with me to talk about some of the opportunities we have in Southern Ontario, we have some apartment buildings in Welland and in Hamilton that we're working on. If you'd like to get involved in any of our projects, make sure to reach out by going to welloff.ca, booking a call, or reach out to me on Instagram, welloffx. There you go. Enjoy the episode. All right. I'm here with Tom Pobojewski. For the first time, we sat down together. I met you in the past at certain events. I guess you were reminding me here. I have a hard time remembering everyone that I meet, but I know for a fact that we've spoken in the past. So thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. I like to start off asking about your childhood. So do you want to tell me about where you grew up, a couple of things you remember?
Well, a great question, actually. I'm originally from the States.
Oh, really?
But I came to Canada when I was a child. So Polish immigrant family. I came to Canada when I was about 1 year old. I'm actually a second-generation realtor. So I watched my dad sell real estate for about 20, 30 years. And then, you know what? I actually became a CPA, CA. And sure enough, I decided to follow my dad's footsteps and become a full-time realtor. So I've been doing this for now 12 years.
Cool. 12 years, yeah. Not a lot of people go from being accountants to becoming real estate agents. Did your family think you were crazy when you did that, or no, because they kind of understood the game?
All the time. Like, honestly, my dad was just like, don't become an agent, because, you won't have a life and you're going to go through basically, I want you to have basically more of a work-life balance than I did.
Yeah.
But sure enough, like the corporate world, when I was working downtown Toronto, I worked for a Big Four firm, and I'd say it didn't really jive with me. I said to myself, if I'm going to spend like 20, 30 years of my life doing something, I better love it, or else it's going to be a very unhappy time, right? So eventually what happened was, like, I got involved in real estate investing. I was trying to figure out how to get ahead in life, because I noticed that the money I was making at my job wasn't really getting me far after paying taxes and personal expenses. I was like, well, how do I get ahead, right? So I started with the stock market. If you remember, in 2007 and 2008, like, I thought I was a rock star. But sure enough, it proved me wrong once everything changed after that. So lost a little bit of money, but I didn't give up. Started with a fix and flip property that eventually got me interested more into real estate. And once I bought my first rental property, within a couple of years, decided to become a full-time realtor. Decided to kind of work for myself.
Was your dad right that you weren't going to have a life when you became a realtor?
You're running your own business, right? But I'm passionate about it, so definitely you work a lot of hours. At the same time, you can still structure in such a way where it can work on your terms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so tell me about your experiences here. So I know you mentioned that you do a couple fix and flips a year, and you're also investing in buy and hold. So tell us a bit about how you built your portfolio. What was the journey like, and where are you at today?
Well, I started with, I guess I should break it down. Like, I kept it fairly simple, in the sense, like, I've got my short game and my long game, kind of like in golf, right? You kind of have to have two games. So what I did was I got involved in, like, these fix and flips, regular sort of properties that you'd find, entry-level homes. and you make a little bit here, make a little bit there. And what I would do is use that money and put them into long-term assets, your long-term buy and holds, cash flowing, single family, duplexes, triplexes. Over time, those triplexes and duplexes and single families would grow in value. You can get them refinanced, pull the money out, and guess what? Put that money into more short-term sort of strategies like flipping. Mm-hmm. And then it would go in a circle like that, basically. And I think the expression is an artesian well. And then over time just kept doing that. So it went from like short-term investing in terms of flips to putting them into long-term assets and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you do with your flips? Like when you started flipping, did you have a hard time with it? Did you struggle? Did you make a lot of mistakes, or what was that experience like?
Well, I would say like I kind of broke it down to like three. I always kind of simplify things, right? With a flip, it can be a little overwhelming, but really comes down to like buying the right property. So underwriting in the sense like evaluating the property and seeing, okay, is this a good buy or not? And trying to figure out, okay, what would it be worth if I did these sorts of renovations? Then secondly was like getting the financing in order, right? So making sure that you've got financing to essentially finance the whole operation, not only just a purchase, but your working capital. And then lastly was finding contractors. And you probably know this, that contractors can be somewhat difficult to find. But through, I guess, kind of contacts and relationships, and then just doing it time after over and over, like it was, we started to build that rapport with some of the same contractors. So I like to use the same people over and over. Mm-hmm. So definitely there's been some challenges along the way, right? I mean, I've had, even people not move out of a house and then have to kind of get cops involved and so on after it closes. So there's been some interesting stories along the way with some of these fix and flips.
Yeah. Are you, I know we touched on some of the areas that you're investing in. Are you still investing in Etobicoke, Mississauga, or has it become too pricey?
No, still doing that. Honestly, still. Let's put it this way. So last month, I purchased a condo for under $400,000 in Brampton. So that's one there. We have another project in Burlington that we're working on. That's about $700,000. There is, what was it, the other one? Oh, the townhouse in Mississauga. That's for about $5 and change. But I try to really focus on the starter market. But you know what, George, you're right. Like it's definitely a pricier area. And one of the challenges with flipping right now is, especially when you're dealing with the higher price points, is you need wider spreads to make it work. Yeah. Because your transaction costs are more, your commissions are more, everything is more. So ideally, you kind of want to stay into like the more affordable price ranges.
Yeah, for sure. So just curious about this Brampton condo. What's the plan? What are you going to do with it?
I'm still figuring that out in the sense that, we have a closing towards the end of the month. Okay. And I may consider assigning it. So, or I think the other strategy will be we're going to go there this week and get a contract and figure out, okay, do we just kind of maybe just do a very light cosmetic work, or are we going to do the whole shebang? Mm-hmm. So that's going to be this upcoming week. We're going to figure that out and what's the best strategy. Because right now, especially in this market, so I don't know if I can mention the date, but we're right now in November, right? And it's a very unique market right now. And it's either you're going to renovate to the nines and try to go for that amazing price that's going to be relative to your kind of your other comparables, or you're going to kind of just do something basic, but is in kind of the lower end of that spectrum. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to get lost in the middle is what I'm finding. Sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting time for flips for sure, because the margins are tighter, prices have come down. So what is your, first of all, did you pick this up off market or the condo? Or
yeah, it's off market.
Off market. And then what do you think the ARV is going to be on that?
So this one here is picked up for $357,000.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, $357,000. ARV is about $500,000.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'm going to figure out how much we want to spend on it and see where we want to. The ARV on a 500 would be fully renovated. Keep in mind. Right. I'm thinking in the back of my mind that if I just do something very basic, we can maybe get 440, 450, mm-hmm. and maybe attract more people that just want to basically live in. Like, let's say I'm a first-time buyer, and I'm looking for value. I want to live in it and do it the way I want to, but it can't be like grotesque. Mm-hmm. So
Okay.
these are kind of the approaches that I'm currently wrestling with right now.
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of options with something like that. What do you think it would be worth right now if you just assigned it or just sold it as is out of curiosity?
I mean, maybe upwards of 4, but even let's say 370, 380, right? Something like that as an assignment. I mean,
Yeah, that would be a pretty good deal if you were to assign it and make that 30 grand on it or whatever. It's still not that bad, right?
No, it's great. I mean, at the end of the day, you kind of you basically sell and then you move on into another project, right? So the turnover is a lot higher.
Exactly.
What I'm finding right now, especially, so again, November 2022, with a market that's got like negative pricing pressure attached to it, you get in, you get out. When the market was screaming hot for the last 2 years before, let's say February, hanging on to a little longer made a lot more sense, right? I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, George, we were picking up townhomes in Mississauga in the summer of August of 2021. For this, we had 3 of them we picked up for $600K. We figured, okay, ARV is going to be $750. We'll net about $40K on it. And as you know, November and December, all of a sudden this market kind of just shoots up. So sure enough, we were ready by January with some of these, and some of the contractors took longer than we wanted. In those cases, those 3 each sold for about $1 million. Kind of lucky, right? Like, we weren't expecting it. So you've got basically a huge discrepancy there. Those townhomes today, unfortunately, are about maybe 800, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the volatility in the market's quite interesting, but just these are the things that we're playing around with these short-term strategies. Is what's the best way to get in and get out?
Yeah, the market's changed quite a bit. Have you found that you've gotten caught in anything because you are doing a couple flips a year with clients and on your own? Has there been a situation where maybe you overpaid for something, or you expected to get a certain price and you didn't get it, and you maybe lost a little bit of money or had to adjust your strategy?
Yeah. No, I have one in Hamilton, for example, was purchased in February. And there was always kind of a risk that something may change. We just don't know when things are going to stop, but you just don't want to put yourself in a position where you don't have alternatives. So in this case, this property, luckily, in this case, we just rented it out for the time being. So that's the alternative. But if, for example, let's say you got private money and that's quite expensive, which we didn't have in this case. I just used lines of credit for this one, so it's less expensive financing. And I'll just hang on to it till things kind of change. So I always say to people, like, have kind of alternatives, understand, okay, what's the worst case scenario? If I can't sell this for what I want, what else am I going to do with it? In this case, it was just renting it out is a better alternative. Sure.
Are you generally buying on your own, or are you partnering with people generally? What's your strategy?
The structure is I wholly own them. I don't normally get involved with the JV's structure so much. I like to just be the lone wolf, so to speak, and not make it too complicated.
Sure. And you mentioned that you're doing like 8 to 10 flips a year, roughly. Maybe things are going to change now because the market's adjusted a little bit, and you're able to do all, like, are you using private money to do this stuff, or are you kind of just you're leveraging your portfolio?
Mostly leveraging the portfolio, like using lines of credit. Sometimes getting private money, but I try to keep my financing relatively inexpensive. So lines of credit are great because you don't have the legal costs associated with it, the higher interest rates, but I mean, even today, bank financing is not as cheap as it used to be, right? So, but in short, I try to use my own resources for flips and flip financing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Your buy and hold portfolio, are you spread out pretty much over a bunch of cities? Do you own a bunch of rentals in different spots, or are you focusing more on one area compared to another?
Yeah. So my first rental was and is in Oshawa. So I've actually never sold a rental, George, believe it or not. I've just hung on to them. So my first one was in the south of Oshawa, and I've had it ever since. Like, I bought it for $130K, and it's worth like, I want to say around $600 to $700K, something like that. I've refinanced it multiple times.
Yep.
And I find that the beauty of that home is, one, I've got a fantastic tenant. And number two is just, again, the access to capital. Can you use the capital in there for other purposes, which fortunately I was able to do. And then my next one after that was in Bowmanville. Another one was in Mississauga, then another one in Barrie. And I kind of went around because I noticed that once I couldn't make numbers work, I would go to another area. And I noticed that eventually the trends would follow. There's kind of like a spillover effect. But I go, like I think I mentioned earlier, like I have as far as within an hour and a half of Toronto. So like Cambridge and Kitchener, etc. So, and even Toronto, triplex and a duplex there. Mm-hmm. So cool. They're fairly scattered.
Yeah, so Oshawa, Bowmanville, Mississauga, Barrie, you're kind of all over. How are you managing to take care of all of these properties? Do you have like a strong team, property management, that sort of thing, or are you self-managing for the most part?
I used to self-manage them, and then eventually got smarter and decided to hire. So it's a combination of like third-party management, and then I have someone in-house that's also managing the majority of them. And then, so I'm trying to delegate as much as I can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's the plan? What are you looking to accomplish here? You've built this portfolio. How far do you want to take this? And what are you striving for? Is it a certain cash flow number? Or are you just growing to build as much equity as possible to grow your net worth?
Yeah, I asked myself that same question. I think it changes all the time. Like when I first got into this real estate, it was just all about getting financially ahead. And then at some point, it gets kind of addictive. I don't know if you found that, right? Like you start building your portfolio, and then you kind of wonder, well, how far can you take this? What I didn't want it to become eventually was like another job. I wanted to be as passive as possible. You and I both know there's no such thing as passive. However, sometimes like if you're like a type A personality, you start to kind of like get, maybe I should get into syndications and maybe I should get into these larger apartment buildings. But then you have to ask yourself, well, what are the eventual goals? Which is what you just asked me. And for me, like it's just a matter of one, preserving wealth and having that in the future. I think eventually what I want to do is take that and then put into like private money and just have kind of an income stream coming in there that's going to finance my future. Mm-hmm. I don't want to overly complicate my life with these 1,000 units, because I think for me, I know what's going to happen is it won't stop, mm-hmm. right? Eventually you just kind of keep growing. And then you wonder, well, why did I get into this first place? I thought I was supposed to get freedom out of this.
Right.
So,
yeah. A lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but some of the people I've spoken to on the podcast have kind of sold off some of their portfolio at a certain point in their lives and just started doing private mortgages, like you mentioned, and they were able to fund their lifestyle moving forward by doing so. And that's a pretty cool strategy. Do you find that, are you investing in other things as well, or is most of your wealth in real estate?
Most of it is in real estate, I'd say. Or like I do some private mortgages too, just for extra cash flow. Majority. So I've always thought about, the diversification. Like I've done the stock trading. I still do some today. I'm not the greatest at it, though. I'll be honest with you. I kind of like the real estate racket the most, I'd say.
And you're also selling real estate. How are you able to manage selling real estate, growing your portfolio, doing flips, managing your buy and holds, doing all of that?
I do. Like I have a team that helps as well, right? I got a great admin staff that assists with that. Interesting enough, a lot of times I would find some properties that my clients didn't want to buy, and I was like, I like this. Why don't I just buy it myself? So it kind of went hand in hand, if that makes sense. A lot of the times, I think ultimately it just comes out also with just like having a good structure. Like for me, it's important to have like a very structured morning where I go through a series of basically a structured morning where you get things done, and then the afternoon's filled with appointments. So that makes sense. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Definitely. It's important to have that structure and to have your goals and to do all that. What's the future going to be like for you? Do you find that you're going to be focusing more on your real estate sales or on your investments, or do you just want to at some point soon lay back and just kind of enjoy the fruits of your labor?
I've thought about that a lot too, actually. So I just turned 40 this year, and thinking about, okay, where do I see myself in like 10 years from now, and or 20 years from now. Like, I'll give you an example. So my dad, right, he just retired, well, semi-retired, 65. And I think in the back of, he doesn't say it like this, but reading between the lines, I think he wished that he had maybe started his semi-retirement 10 or 15 years sooner. But it wasn't until I think COVID happened where he decided to actually buy a cottage, which was the trend with a lot of people, and remove himself out of the working environment that he was able to enjoy himself. So I think by 50 or 55, having more life on your terms, right? I think that's why we're all doing this, is like, okay, where do you want to spend your time? I personally I couldn't see myself on an island, 24/7 or something like that. I want to constantly like do projects of some sort, but not necessarily, but doing it on your terms, right? Where it's not necessarily like 60, 70 hours a week. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, definitely makes sense. Who's to say that the perfect life is not working? Some people enjoy working and they want to continue to do it even into their 60s or 70s or whatever else.
Yeah, like the mayor of Mississauga, right? Hazel, she was mayoring. She was being a mayor till like 90 or 100 years old. Like, it's crazy, but she loved it. She loved it. So.
Yeah, for sure. Just going back to the deals you were talking about. So you mentioned the Brampton condo and the Mississauga townhouse and all that. You said some of them were off market. How are you finding these deals? Are they people that reach out to you because they know you? Are you talking to wholesalers? Are you marketing?
A combination of on market, realtor.ca, MLS, believe it or not, still has deals. People will say there's no deals available, but if you look hard enough, you'll find them. Luckily, I'm in a position where if you're doing this every single day, you start recognizing the opportunities that maybe someone else doesn't. Definitely have built some great relationships with wholesalers. I like to think they like working with me because I have the experience, I can close, and I'm easy to deal with. So that's another great resource. And I've discovered that one in 2018. And I didn't think it even existed because I heard about it in the States. But I'm like, and then sure enough, there was one guy that was doing it, and I said the same comment, and he goes, I didn't think so either. And then he started to build this huge business out of it. And then there's also just there's agents out there that know what we do, realtors that have some exclusive off-market deals, and they come to us and say, listen, we've got this property. I think it might be a good fit for you. The seller doesn't want to put it on the market for privacy reasons. Are you interested in it? And those are also opportunities that take place. Yeah.
You mentioned dealing with wholesalers and that you were pretty easy to deal with and whatnot. What are some tips that you would have for people, maybe that if it's their first time dealing with a wholesaler or they're interested in going down that path? What do you think they should do to establish that relationship? And what do you think is the right way to deal with a wholesaler?
So one is understand the financing with a wholesale deal. So making sure you have the financial backing. So, for example, one thing to be cognizant of is if you buy a wholesale deal, you may not be able to finance the assignment fee attached to it, right? So if they bought it for $400K and you take it off their hands for $500,000, you've got $100,000 spread there. Depending on where you're getting your money from, that money may have to come in the form of cash. So don't be surprised with the financing. I always say have your cash and financing available up front. And that's the question they're always going to ask you is, how are you financing this? So be prepared to answer that question. I think the other thing too is just do your due diligence on the property and have that open line of communication, right? I'd say one thing, because I'm experienced at it, that we have a good rhythm, right? There isn't too much back and forth. There's maybe some questions, but the process is fairly fluid, if that makes sense. But the financing, I think, is really critical to help to answer the question, how are you financing this? Where are you getting the money from?
Sure. Yeah. I'm in the process of buying something from a wholesaler for the first time myself, and it's pretty cool seeing how it works. It's more of like a personal relationship, sort of, even though like we don't know each other really well, but I feel like they want to know who you are, what your plans are, how experienced are you, can we make this deal happen? And the cool thing is, because I had looked at another property that they sent me in the past, they brought me this deal before sending it out to like through a mass email. So I was kind of a priority on their list. And I think that's important too, to make sure you establish that relationship so you can get some exclusive deals.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll get the call too sometimes and say, hey, we have something here. We don't want to give it to our mass list for a variety of reasons. So you get kind of like that front of the line access, so to speak, on some of the properties. So
yeah. And in this example for the property that I'm working on, the owners were kind of ashamed of the state of their home, and they didn't really want them to market it to a bunch of people. So they just reached out to a certain few that were really interested in that specific pocket in that area for that type of property.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, be honest with you, George, like I've even wholesaled myself, but in a different sense. Like what I've done oftentimes is like I'll secure a property under contract, even on an MLS deal, for example, and then I'll share it with my investor groups and say, hey, I've got something here that's really special. And if someone wants to take it off my hands, by all means. Sometimes I don't even do a markup because there's already a commission attached to it. But sometimes by the time I go to a client and say, hey, I got this great deal, you should come take a look at it, it's gone. So if I can reserve that, and I feel I'm confident enough that if someone doesn't want it, I'll take it on myself, then great. But the process, like you said, is the exact same. It's just a matter of finding a willing buyer that's willing to take it off your hands for the same terms.
Yeah. How have you built that list of people that you can shop these opportunities to? Is that from networking? Is that just from being in the business for a while?
Yeah, go to meetups, for example. You find people that are interested in those opportunities. A lot of the investors that I've built up over the years, it's a lot of the same people, I would say, that are familiar with how we do things, and you create those relationships. So it just comes from over time, just networking and being in the space. And as well, sometimes people will see what we do. We have like a YouTube channel and it shows before and afters, and they're kind of curious, okay, what's this all about? So we've even held seminars on it too. It's like how to flip homes for profit in the GTA. And that's how we've built up that database of willing buyers.
Since the market's adjusted, prices have come down from the heights of February, March, whatever. Are you changing your strategy at all moving forward with your flips? Are you doing anything differently now? Are you going to scale back, or are you still going full speed ahead?
Definitely we're more careful about the properties that we're looking at. So definitely it's decreased for sure this year. I do feel that we are coming to a bottom. I've seen stabilization in pricing. Now it's area by area, so you have to be aware of it. However, in terms of the interest rate cycle that they're projecting, I mean, I think we're almost there. So I feel the best opportunities will come in the next 2 to 6 months for any buyer, as far as anyone that's looking for the so-called bottom. And I say it in air quotes, but you probably can't see it. But everyone's trying to pick a bottom, and I think you're going to see in the next 2 to 6 months. One way I've readjusted the strategy is try to get in and out sooner rather than later. So it used to be kind of let's go the whole 9 yards with a flip. Let's do the kitchens. Let's do the bathroom. Something that would take upwards of 2 to 3 months to renovate. Whereas because now the price we have a downward pricing pressure, it's probably better to get out sooner than later. So maybe just doing a light cosmetic where someone can just move in and do it themselves over time, but it's not grotesque enough that they feel like there's something around them, like cockroaches. That is a better approach.
Sure.
Yeah,
because there aren't as many people right now that are looking for that immaculate property that's got the top upgrades. Possibly maybe they're more willing to take on something that needs a little bit more work but get a lower price because they're being a little more conservative. And the other part is affordability has come down because the rates are so much higher. Like we have some clients that maybe 2 weeks ago my wife was working with someone that was able to buy a condo for $510, and today it's like $490. So it's an adjustment in their affordability. I know it's not a massive number, but if you take larger budgets, then that's going to impact their affordability significantly more.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. It's like you don't want to get lost in the middle, right? You kind of want to be either priced at the bottom end of the comparables or the top end. But because it's taking so much more time to go, let's say, get the top price, maybe going after the bottom end with something with a light cosmetic work is going to work to your benefit from a timing perspective. And just like you said, from a value and affordability perspective.
Mm-hmm. Have you yourself or with clients worked with any creative programs to make deals work, like the Purchase Plus Improvements program, that type of thing?
Not really, I'd say. No. Like I know with our fix and flips, what we do offer is like private lending. So one reason why people kind of work with us also is like we have access to private capital, not through a broker. I'm talking about just through our network of people that have some excess cash and are looking to fund a project. Now they won't finance the working capital, but they will go up to, let's say, 80% LTV, and that's and that's not, like I said, through a broker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's. I guess that is a good benefit, because if you are going through a broker, there's that lender fee. They might be saving a little bit of money if they avoid that, which is typically a lender fee would be somewhere around 2%. There might be a broker fee involved, that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just, again, going back to like the fix and flips, it's like finding the property, finding the financing, which we can arrange, and then the contractor. You have if you can package that together for somebody, you create a kind of a turnkey sort of solution for them as an investment. Yeah,
for sure. It's interesting that you don't really do too many joint ventures, because I would imagine people must ask you, to work with them.
I've had it before, but I just like to just stay separate. I'd rather be a consultant. So my job, I see, is like instead of being a salesperson or a real estate broker, it's like I'm a consultant. I'm there to help you find the property. I'm going to find you the financing, and I'm also going to help you put the scope of work together and the contractors. So then when we go to market, we've got a great product, we sell it, and we're going to do it again.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Okay. What advice do you have for people that are looking to flip in the next couple months, or even if they're looking to buy and hold?
You know what? Be greedy when everyone's fearful. I would say that's going to be my motto for the next 2 to 6 months, is really start looking at the opportunities that are going to present themselves. Because right now people are really scared. There's so much negativity out in the media. I mean, even like pre-con. I was reading this yesterday in the Toronto Star. So this is, again, November 1st, 2022, that like pre-construction, I don't know if you noticed this, they're offering so many crazy incentives for people to buy pre-con. And I knew sales were bad, but they were down, I want to say 70% for Q3 of 2022 versus last year. And apparently like 2/3 of the projects didn't sell one unit for the 3 quarters. So there's a lot of fear in this market right now. But our long-term fundamentals as they stand is we have low supply and high demand that's coming, especially from the immigration. If you look at the statistics, we have like very little inventory. We have less than 3 months of inventory, which is traditionally a seller's market. But psychologically, people have been kind of, I don't know the word brainwashed, but let's just say they've been reading the news, and they've been noticing that things aren't as rosy as they were for the last 2 years.
Well, doesn't that make you laugh, though, a little bit? Like, personally, when I hear that those pre-con units aren't selling, whereas the last five plus years, you couldn't get your hands on a unit because of how crazy things were. Doesn't that just make you realize how much people basically rely on either the news or are just following a trend, or, doing what everyone else is doing and not really following a fundamental strategy? It's
definitely a herd mentality, right? I mean, everyone likes to buy when the market's going up because their neighbor's buying and everyone's getting rich, right? But then when things kind of turn, then people are a little more cautious. Absolutely. I mean, the other part to that pre-con story was there is the gap is widening between the pre-con prices and resale. Like, it's widening ever so much. The pre-con prices, though, they can't really reduce them because their costs are not going anywhere. So they need a certain margin out of it. Meanwhile, these resale properties are, let's just say, they're selling at a discount. They're values. So look for those value plays that are coming in the next, even today, but in the next 2 to 6 months.
Yeah, that's cool. And that just goes to show that people who are following fundamental investing principles are always going to do well. Anyone I know that was investing a year ago, 6 months ago, they're still looking for opportunities and are still willing to go because nothing's changed other than maybe the price and whatnot and the rates. So it's good to know that there are a lot of wise investors out there, and I hope that people continue to learn and to understand how to succeed in a market like this.
Yeah, for sure. There's like you said, there's definitely going to be the opportunities that present themselves.
Yeah. Any final words to share with the audience before we move on?
I go back to what I said earlier. It was like, be greedy when everyone's fearful. So don't put your head in the sand and kind of wish things were different. be present, work every day, and good things are going to come.
Sure. Tom, how do people reach you, and maybe tell us a little bit about how you can help the audience with your services?
Yeah. So again, it's Tom Pobojewski from the Royal LePage Signature Office in Mississauga. Our phone number is 905-568-2121. We do have all the social media, so I'm sure that'll be shared. And so you can just reach out if you want to discuss, for example, fix and flips and what we're seeing out there, any off-market properties. You can join our list as well. And as well, we are helping people also move from your traditional residential from A to B. So absolutely reach out and love to help.
Cool. Tom, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. It's nice sitting down with you today, and wish you all the best in the next couple months to continue to grow your portfolio.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me on here.
Thanks for listening to this episode. Your support is truly appreciated. And if you can share this with a friend or family member that might benefit from the information, remember, our goal is to motivate and inspire others to take action and to build wealth and to become well off. Enjoy the rest of your day.